So the technique of egg tempera is different from oil in that it dries much quicker, and it has a different consistency to it. So a lot of times painting with egg tempera is almost described as drawing with a pencil. You're not going to create really fluid, broad washes of color. You're kind of limited to small strokes. And there's a lot of hatching involved, building up the forms with, just hatched lines or contour lines. So the first thing I want to talk about is what I'm using. And these are Rublev colors. You can get these. They're in a powder form. I ordered this from Natural Pigments, but it comes in a powder form. So, most of these products are sources that come from the earth. So I don't think they're too toxic, but it's always important to wear gloves. So I have these latex gloves, and I'm actually wearing a mask too. I selected colors that are very similar to what the old masters would have used. They didn't have access to all the really vibrant colors that are created in labs today, like cadmium reds and things like that. So the palette is somewhat subdued, and they created really amazing color effects with how they were using the pigments. So I have two different greens here. This is a taubish green earth. This is a Verona green earth. The Verona is a little darker, and they are taken from volcanic selatonite. So taken from basically that mineral. I have a titanium white. Now the old masters would have used a lead white, but lead is very toxic, so I substituted it for a titanium white. Here is a natural yellow earth, and then Venetian red, which is like a clay red. Both of those are taken from the earth. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to see how far along I get with this, but I'm going to start with the green. I'm going to create an underpainting in green, and then if I have time, I'll layer some of the flesh tones over top of that. I'm going to be practicing the Verdaccio method, which we're actually doing in the class on Monday too. So what you'll need, let me go through that. So if you're working with egg tempera, it's good to just collect lots of these little containers. You can buy glass ones at Jerry's Artorama. What I've done is I've prepared a few colors already. I haven't added the egg to this yet, but the method is that you want to take the powder and basically create a paste out of the powder prior to adding the egg yolk. And so I've done that. I went ahead and did that a couple of days ago, just to save some time. And then the way to store that, they recommend filling it with water so it doesn't dry out and harden. So it stays very fluid. So I've just filled each of these containers with water, sealed it with the lid, and then I've positioned them next to the colors that I'm using. The powder can be kind of coarse in its natural form. So they say you should still kind of grind it with the water, like let the water and the powders mix together and smooth it out that way. So you want some type of something to mull it with. I just use a shot glass. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So I take a shot glass. So that's going to be something I'll be using in a moment. And then I have this little container of water with an eyedropper. This helps me to control how much water I'm putting in. I'm going to actually do my grinding right here on this is a piece of granite, which is smooth surface. They recommend stone or granite or marble. And so I have extra eyedroppers here. I have my palette knife nearby. I'm going to use this to transfer my powder onto the stone. So I have some other stuff I'm going to use once I add the egg. So this is, again, this is a process where I'm just preparing a sort of a paste. And then when you add the egg, that's referred to as tempering the paint. But once you add the egg, it's not going to keep for very long. So that's why in this form, you can store it for quite a while. Once you add that egg, it's going to spoil quickly. So this, again, there's nothing but the water mixed with this. So I'm going to work with this Tavish green earth. Open this up. Do my best to show you what that looks like. So you can see there's a kind of a coarse grind there. Sort of looks like flour in its texture. And I kind of feel like I'm cooking when I'm doing this. It's a sort of a nice, feels kind of nice to do this. It's like a nice, knowing exactly what your materials are and preparing them is something very satisfying about that for me. So I'm just going with, I don't have any exact measurement here. I'm just kind of creating a little pile. The advantage to egg tempera is it does dry very quickly. So if it's, kind of using sort of that principle of transparent to opaque, I can go over this one time, and then I can go back over it again with a second layer and make it more opaque. So I'm just going to come back and start working over top of this. And I can kind of follow, I'm going to sort of hatch over this in the same way that I did with my original strokes. I want to try to do this somewhat rapidly. I'm going to try adding some just pure white right over top of that. You can do this in multiple layers. Like I could do this. Oh, this is nice. This white is really opaque. Wow, that feels really good. So anyway, as I was saying, I could do this. I could really just kind of build these lights up very intensely, which is what the book actually recommends that I was reading, is to paint your whites almost in a pure white, because you can always go back. I could go back with my original green very transparently over that again if I wanted to tone that down. And that essentially is what, would be very similar to a glaze. But now I'm starting to feel this sense of modeling the form. Like, partly it's the use of the white, because the white is naturally very opaque, but it really, going over that mid-tone green is really helping to, I can describe a lot of that form, that surface form, and the turning of the plane. I'm kind of thinking of the plane turning, the zygomatic arch is turning this way into the eye socket. So you have this cross contour, plane moving that way. And then you have the plane that's also kind of coming down like this. It's moving in this direction. So in this way, I would do a cross contour drawing like this in a very similar manner. But it's a way to, to really control the form and do what you want with it. Like make it very dimensional. And this is what I see in a lot of the old masters' work. I see this kind of thing in the modeling. A lot of that cross contour. And when you start layering different colors over that, so maybe now, once I've developed this, I feel like that's probably far enough. Maybe instead of going back over that white with the green, I could go over that with another color, maybe one of my flesh colors, like a yellow tint or a pink tint. So there you can see, and I can kind of it's like this interwoven effect, kind of like a lace work almost, that you can start to create, by alternating your strokes. I can let little bits of green come through in places, and I can just pass very thin layer of this this pink over top, and that's really where the, you know, now I'm starting to get the effect. You kind of, it takes a long time to get to this point though. You kind of need that base layer, and then you just keep adding and adding and adding. And I've heard some painters say that who work with tempera, you know, and sometimes they'll use like 40 layers in the painting.
Jesus.
They'll just keep building it up. And I can easily see how that would happen. So if I was to continue along with this, I would, you know, I might do like these pale flesh tones, and then I might go back over that with a more concentrated red. You know, maybe start introducing some yellows, and some other colors into this. But yeah, that's really starting to get more of that optical color effects. I'm getting little bits of the green showing through the pink. It's just, as I said in the beginning, this is something that you want to give yourself a sufficient amount of time to develop, because it's not going to be a quick thing. And it's not like oil painting, which is really quick. I could just kind of throw that in there and blend it. This is a very deliberate, specific approach that I'm using, and it's, you know, I'm sort of starting with that base layer of the green, which is what the old masters would do, the verdaccio layer, and then you just gradually build your colors up. And quite frankly, their palettes were very limited. Like, they may not have used any more than 4 or 5 colors, but it was just with this layering process, using the transparency, the opacity, and the opalescence, that they got a tremendous amount of luminosity in their paintings.